Hello, and welcome to my Therapist Plays Disco Elysium analysis series. So, on today's episode, on the plot side, we are going to see if we can establish our authority with Titus, the union boss. We're going to see if we can get a little closer to a confession from him on who exactly was involved with the murder in Martinez. And over on the analysis side, we're going to be taking a deep dive into the rigorous self-critique thought. Now that we finally internalized this one, it opens the door for a lot of discussion on Harry's sense of self and kind of digging into the question of, is he actually a good person? And if he's not, does he think that it's possible to become one? This one's a little bit heavier on the analysis, but it's pretty exciting to finally peel back more layers of our character. So let's jump in. Any predictions on where the story will go or who's the killer? I kind of had the idea that we would be somewhat involved in the killing, like, because we are so uninitiated to our own past. I don't think that we did it, like, would have hung him up like that, but I sort of have the suspicion that the dock workers are kind of like a red herring. I just don't buy it. I just don't buy it that's where we're leading, but I could be wrong. I am notoriously bad at predicting the plot of anything ever. Like when you have already probably noticed this, but like when politics or the plot are part of the dialogue, my brain like it does this. It feels like it condenses down to like I have to. I've had to do this before, where I'm like, okay, what is happening here? My brain is just equipped for like character and analysis. And the way I engage with media just privately is like when I'm watching something, I'm not really thinking about the plot. I'm very rarely like, I'm not like watching Shutter Island and I'm like, where is this going? I wonder what's going to happen next. My brain just like accepts whatever's going to happen. But what I'm thinking about is like, wow, what is that character feeling right now? You know, I wonder how like whatever is going to happen to them is going to change their worldview. Like that's more where my mind is focused. And I kind of just accept the plot, whatever it is. It doesn't matter that much to me. The sequence of things happening. Unless it is so egregious that I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. What if it was Lena? Well, I refuse to accept that. Lena is too kind-hearted and good-natured for her to be involved in that. It's funny, therapists often seem to struggle with things like predicting stuff or telling if someone is lying. Well, that's true because like at the risk of like I always go on some sort of rant at the beginning of these streams. But that's the thing is we are not detectives, right? A therapist is not a detective. If someone comes into my therapy session, I'm always pretty upfront about the fact that like, look, my role is to help you in whatever capacity that I can, right? My philosophy on this is like, if you give me good information, if you are honest about what you're going through, if you are open to challenging things, and the information that you give me about your life and what you're going through is good, you will get good therapy, right? Because like I'm gonna work off of what I receive. If you give me bad information, meaning that if you are dishonest, if you are withholding things, if you lie about something, I'm going to respond to that as if that's that's honest, because like I'm not there to like sort out if someone's lying to me or not. I'm there to work off of their investment. Like I can't work harder than them in some respects, right? So if you give me good information, you'll get good help. If you give me bad information, you'll get bad help, because you could come in and say, yeah, I'm doing great at my job. There's nothing to talk about there. And you could be like failing at your job. You could hate it. It could be like the source of your depression. But if you tell me you're doing great, I'm going to be like, cool, let's move on. I may have a suspicion down the line, like, wait a second. Like you said earlier that your job is fine, but it sounds like there are some stressful things there. Like I might push into that at some point. But again, like I'm only going to really, I'm not there to like sort out what's true and not. I'm there to work off of what's brought in, you know? So I guess that's why I'm not super good at detecting lies, because I'm not really looking for them. It takes you being honest, I think. Well, sometimes I am surprised by my own predictions, yes. It does happen from time to time that I get something. I have predicted like 5 things like extremely accurately in the course of like watching anime and stuff, and everything else I just like someone said it in one of the comments or something. Like whenever I start saying like maybe, you know that like just some random unhinged stuff is about to happen. Do I have any personal idea of who the killer could be? Who do I think did it? Well, look, I gotta ask first. If I'm asking who did it, I gotta ask who benefits, okay? I gotta ask myself, what does killing this man bring, okay? And I don't think that it was like a crime of passion. Or it could be. I don't know. Like I said, prepare for me to get this wildly wrong. This is wild speculation, Brady. Part of me wants to reject the impulse that this is like a crime of passion, because it looks like pretty gruesome. And it makes me want to think, well, I would only be here if there were this murder. I think this is less about the murder victim and more about the changes to the society that the murder will bring. It will bring myself and Kim here, lead us down some sort of path. I might not know enough about the guy to intuit something like that. Oh, I don't, right? Like I said, this is like baseless speculation. Just on like trying to find an interesting angle on it. I kind of doubt that it's any of these people. Okay. It's Tuesday. We need to interrogate the men in the union booth. Find out what they know about the hanging in Martinez. It's gruesome because you didn't take it down for 7 days. Yeah, that's true. Do I think Disco Elysium could be used as a tool for therapy? Sure. I think anything is useful as a tool for therapy in the hands of a skilled therapist. I work in games, and there's been some talk about leveraging games in some form of therapy, and for me at least, playing Disco was an experience I connect with. Yeah. I think it would take the therapist and the gamer knowing lots of things about it. But yeah, I mean, like sometimes I recommend my clients to read a book. I'll say, here, I want you to go read this book and talk about it with me, because it's relevant to what you're going through. So I don't see why, like, in the future, as games become more universal, that I could be like, hey, you know, I think this is relevant to what you're going through. I think you should become a gamer and play Disco Elysium. So I know we already talked to these gentlemen, but I'm ready to give it another try. Let's ask him if he did it.
The pretty boy. You guys really love talking about that pretty boy.
Funny, but my partner and I have a serious matter to discuss with you.
Let's see. Why is there a container belt around the man's neck?
Container belt? Like we use in the harbor?
Yes.
Because we took it from the harbor where we work. Then we went out back and used it to hang him.
Oh. Did he just admit to the crime?
As he speaks, his fists contract, going through the pulling motion again, savoring it.
What? Did he just admit to the crime?
We did this together, all of us, until he was dead. That's why there's a container belt around his neck.
Okay, that's it. The game's over. We got the perpetrator. We gotta wrap it up.
No, you don't. What you have is 7 honest men who thought it forthcoming to tell you what happened, so that you don't waste any more of your time.
They're playing to their considerable strength in numbers. Don't talk about arresting them. You'll only bring attention to your inability to do so.
Okay, Authority, I'm going to listen to you this time. So what? They just confessed. I guess they did it. Who called the shots that night? That's what I want to
Are
know.
you deaf? There will be no singling anyone out. You can't arrest a Hardy Boy without arresting all Hardy Boys.
Well, fuck,
Do
I
you
want to arrest
think
them all
you could do
then.
that? Do you think you could arrest them all?
Kim's got my back.
Titus, keep addressing him. He wants everyone to know he's in charge.
Fucking okay. Authority's got my back as well. Look, they may have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 plus 8 individuals here, but I've got like several mental health problem voices, more than that, who are here to back me up. Let's do it. Let's address him. Let's play along.
Who do you fucking think does?
Bow to the bearded man. You give the commands. He wants everyone to know he's in charge, so let's play along.
That's right, asshole. Titus Hardy runs the Hardy Boys. Ain't that so, fellas?
Unless he's a
I
plant.
think you got your answer, Mr. Law.
So he's not the leader.
No, you did not get an answer. Titus does administrative work. He pushes paper, fills out forms the others can't read. But on that night, they all acted as one man.
That's just some fucking psychological bullshit. Isn't that like, wasn't that like part of the defense of the fucking Manson people? Where it's like, oh, well, he didn't commit the crimes himself. He just radicalized a bunch of people to do it for him. I did spin kick Measurehead. I did. We did do that. Let's ask why that they killed him.
Why? 'Cause he was worthless mercenary scum. And he stepped out alive in my town.
Who are you covering up for? That's what I want to know. So he was a mercenary. That's it?
And he stepped out of line.
What
Okay.
kind of mercenary?
Get him, Kim.
The kind that shows up when you start a strike. The experienced kind, too. Had Kohoy and Semenine written all over him. Ex-Oranese Special Forces.
Okay.
A live grenade right here in our bar.
This one has a special gripe with him coming here.
I can't prove it, but I know he was sent by the Wild Pines. They hire merc shit like that. Story of every strike from here to Samara.
So these guys think that Wild Pines got someone in here to rile people up, I guess. How do you know that he was in Special Forces?
Because one night he walked straight up to the mic and said, I'm Oranese goddamn Special Forces, and I'm gonna fuck you all.
Game volume needs some adjustment. Okay, let's do that. Let me know how that is. I sincerely doubt that
Really?
happened.
Yeah, really. Had a gin and tonic up there, sang some Oranese paratrooper song, and said he's gonna fuck everyone.
We couldn't believe it either, but he fucking did. Right there. Like some kind of animal.
But what did he actually do?
Wrong. He harassed women, raped one, harassed workers,
Threatened to kill some as a warning.
There's a slight
Okay.
unease in him suddenly. He regrets mentioning the rape.
To kill us all if we don't open the gates, if we don't let the scabs in, if we don't bend over. That was before he started coming here.
Yeah, he said it was his favorite joint now. Started coming here every night. Drinking, grabbing girls. Grab one of ours mid-karaoke, right there on the stage.
I wonder why. I'll save it. I'll save my critique for after.
He grabbed someone?
The lieutenant is trying to make sense of this flood of
Yeah.
information.
This girl's on the mic. A beautiful girl, young. Gets into the second verse of Lover Lake. The fucker grabs her legs, starts screaming. Show me your cunt. Why don't you show me your cunt? Then he gets knocked on the head with a wine bottle. Doesn't even fall down.
I think we're gonna have to ask if this was the same individual.
Aren't you fucking listening? My man is talking to you. He took care of it. They got the girl out before anything else could happen.
Yeah, me and Eugene got her out. Aren't you fucking listening?
Okay. That's a very serious allegation. I want to know who they're talking about.
No, you're not getting a name. That's a Martinez matter. And I'm not discussing it with you clowns.
Despite the stonewalling, you can slip one more question in.
Okay, Volition. Let's push further into that because that seems like a... I don't know. Seems like a serious allegation to me.
Titus, do not answer. You have been forthcoming enough.
Fuck off, Carl. She's gone through enough without you harassing her too. She doesn't need more embarrassment.
What are you
okay.
talking about? Embarrassment. If someone has been sexually assaulted, we need to...
What you need is to get the fuck out of my face. I've had enough of explaining myself to you fucks. He's dead. It's done.
As you can see, these men can only take so much baseless scrutiny.
Baseless?
I'm doing my best to keep the situation civil, but...
All of my scrutiny is based, okay? It is not baseless.
It won't be for long, she means. It's true. She was the only thing holding him back.
Okay. You murdered him just like that, no remorse.
How many people have you sent to the Shays? Ever felt remorse for them?
Or send them to Reunion to rot. For 20 years. For life.
Look, I'm just doing my job. What we do is different. We enforce the law. You just kill people like it's nothing. Honestly, I drink so much I can't really remember anyone. Let's see. My character, okay, like some of the stuff that we've been talking about for Harry is how he views the world, right? So much of it so far has been in terms of authority, and if I just go off of things we've said before, we were like, well, why can't we arrest those kids? Why can't we arrest Everett Clare? Why, like, he seems to have a very simple view of like the power dynamic, and I think that that's coming from the fact that he doesn't really remember who he was as a cop. Like, imagine you just woke up and you knew you were a cop, but this is like still new to you. There are some like ingrained things, you know, some of your repressed memory is coming back, but I imagine him to be someone who is like if you made me a cop today, some of my questions would be like, well, why can't we just arrest them? Right? But that's because I haven't lived as a cop. It's a complex thing, right? So what I'm wondering here is like, Harry is learning that the world does not work like that. Okay, we cannot just be an authority figure just because we have the badge. We've tried that a couple of times. But what would we stand on? Would we stand on the morality? Like, that because we have the badge, we get to decide who is good or bad? We're just doing our job? We're neutral? That's a pretty neutral thing to say. I like neutrality. What we do is different. We enforce the law. So, like, these sound like strongly held convictions, which I don't think we have very many of at the moment. What do I think he would sympathize with? These men have all come to me and said, based on principle, we don't need cops. We are able to decide what's right and wrong in our community. And so he may be more sympathetic to the community aspect. He's going to say, yeah, but this guy was bad. I don't even really believe this. It's not like they killed him like it was nothing. Clearly, maybe it was a crime of passion in some ways. I'm just going to go with the... We don't have our badge now. Being a cop is a conviction. Yeah, it is. But he's very inconfident about himself as a cop, right? I just did like my whole analytical piece on how he's not sure what kind of cop he is, right? This part right here. He's not sure what kind of cop he is, and so to me it doesn't make sense that he'd be like, but I'm the kind of cop who I have a strong conviction about what my role is. I'm just gonna go neutral here. It's just gonna piss people off, but I'm gonna go for it.
Oh, so you are just a simple, well-meaning man, eh? Ever been in solitary? Prison is a charter. That's what it is.
He's clearly been in solitary confinement, and at a young age, nonetheless.
So is hanging a man, slowly, without breaking his neck.
I'm so pissed. Well, look, I told you, I'm doing what I think my character would do. How did you kill him?
We hanged him up by his neck until he got real still. Wasn't that obvious, copper?
Didn't they teach you anything at the cop school, idiot?
You're pretty sure you've had at least 2 years of cop school and many more of active service.
That's right. That's right, Authority.
Certainly enough to not put up with his backsass. Deliver a knockdown observation.
Now you listen to me, Sonny Jim. The autopsy showed the victim's hands weren't tied. No sign of struggle. Explain this and make it real simple. Fuck it. I'm going with it.
Look, I'm not gonna play 20 questions with you, capo. I'll say it again. We killed him.
Do I think he's a neutral man? No, but I think that he is... While he's still figuring out the difference between who he is now and who he used to be, like, there is an investment in integrating these two things, at least from my perspective. It's very hard for him to start standing on very hard-held beliefs because they may be incompatible with, like, who he used to be, right? I'll talk about this in a second, but it comes down to ego defense.
Yeah, I knocked him out. Came up behind him and clubbed him in the back of the head. He went down like a sack of sand.
That's right, lawman. And then we hanged the fuck.
Ooh. We did level up our composure when we were talking to Annette. It's still not enough here. Maybe we can ask some more questions. Mr. Tats, what did you do to knock the victim
My
out?
fucking elbow, Copper. Samaran boxing style.
Where did this take
Right
place?
fucking here. Eugene already told you that the fuck had started coming to our bar.
Yeah, man. Weren't you listening?
They keep speaking for Titus. so that he wouldn't get his hands muddy with too much explaining.
It's a red check. It can't be retried. 58%. Maybe I can ask some more questions first.
Like what, Copper?
When did this
You
happen?
don't have to keep answering his questions.
Yes, you do.
know,
I'm a cop.
Lizzie. Relax. We killed him last Sunday night. Seemed like a good way to end the week.
How long? Did you know
Known
the-
him? We don't associate with scum like that, asshole.
Look, I'm getting signs that the chat is hitting me with lucky tomatoes, so
Yeah! Who do you think we are?
I have gloves for composure, do I? Oh, I can't look in my inventory. I'll back out of this conversation and check.
Quiet. He came around about 3 weeks ago when that Pines cow first sailed into town. Happy?
By the Pines cow, you mean Joyce Mason?
Joyce.
The representative for White Pines? The same company you are striking against?
No. I mean the Pines cow. The stupid-ass cow they sent in to fuck us over. But you know what?
He rubs his chin, pretending to
Why
mull
don't you
over.
ask her about the pretty boy? I'm sure she has interesting things to say when you ask her hard enough.
That's enough insinuation for today, Titus. Officer, your interview is drawing to an end. Don't waste your last questions.
Yeah, I don't think I can back out of this. And I don't remember. I think we checked our inventory and we're wearing everything that we can for composure already. So I have to do the check now.
You don't have to keep
I know, Lizzie. Relax.
Known him?
Yeah!
Quiet.
By the Pines cow.
No.
Why don't you ask her about the pretty...
That's enough insinuation for today, Titus.
How do I get back to that one? Which one was
Officer,
it? Was it
Your
how did
interview
you
is
kill
drawing
him?
to an end.
We hanged him up.
Didn't they take...
You're pretty sure. Certainly enough to not put up with his backside.
Yeah. That's right, Lawman.
Yes. Okay.
And then we hanged the fuck.
All right. Let's get this fire started, okay? We need some fucking tomatoes in the chat right now to get our dice roll. Look, there's a secret addition that happens to the dice roll when chat is full of lucky tomatoes. Okay. I'm seeing a lot of them flow through right now. The other thing is, look, I'm sizing this guy up, all right? It takes a lot of responsibility and a lot of conviction to stand before me with my flashlight and my cool hat, jacket, shoes, and Kim beside me, right? And to back all these guys up, okay? Now, look, that's whether or not we agree, that's something that I can respect, is that he's putting himself out there like this. But I can also tell that he's nervous, okay? Nobody likes being questioned on their morals. Nobody likes being questioned on their convictions. And nobody likes to also be targeted by authority figures. Okay, so I got a lot of respect for this guy, just from a very primal sort of way. Now, I do not have respect for his actions or his beliefs. Flashlight gives us the extra composure. I think it does. But let's see if we can break him down, okay? I'm fucking going for it.
Actually, they're admirably, surprisingly composed. The entire room. Given how many questions you've lobbed their way.
All of them? Maybe one of them is fidgeting.
Well, this one. But he's always fidgeting.
Fucking
so don't
hell.
get your hopes up.
We're too fucked. We're too fucked up to... I thought that we had an understanding. What I was getting at is it takes a lot of pressure from me to stand here and for you to stand here and to do this whole rigmarole. Let's connect on just the fact that no one wants to be here right now. But it didn't work.
Like what, Copper?
Okay, what are we going to do now?
Nothing. Your investigation here is done. Leave
Every-
Martinez, go back to your stations where you belong.
Every check that I talk about a lot fails. I know it does. And every time I just make a check without thinking about it, it tends to succeed. It's true. It's so true.
I think we're going to stick around, thanks. Some things don't add up here, Titus.
Fuck.
I've done this job for long enough to know that people don't just confess to first-degree murder. Even if it is a group responsibility, we're going to look into this.
It's all a cover-up.
Good luck with that.
Who are you protecting?
You've heard everything a rent-a-cop is gonna hear from us. Real law officials. You're lucky you didn't get a beating.
Who are you protecting right now? Okay, who's really benefiting from this? Is it Claire? Is it Everett?
Rent-a-cop. So that's what this is about. He doesn't see you as his equals.
Establish authority. We have to. We have to do it. And fuck this. Absolutely fuck this. I'm not even going to talk about it. I'm just going to do it.
Establish authority. Yes. Authority. Feverish thoughts race through your mind.
Damn it! Let's just stop. Let's stomp our feet. We could point at him. We could point at him, or we could ask for the gun. That's it. That's all I got. Look, the only thing that we have been able to do so far is embarrass ourselves. I'm not gonna stomp my feet. I do like the idea of pointing my finger at him. I'm gonna point my finger.
And what exactly is it you've been doing that's so goddamn special? Shitting yourself in front of us. Going around harassing kids on the street. Kids who've done nothing wrong.
You don't know that.
Talking racist shit. Don't think we aren't watching, Fascia. People here trust us. We're getting complaints.
I don't even have a gun.
What are you talking about? Guns are the only thing you have. Waving them around old ladies' faces. Trying to gun down kids.
He knows about Kuno?
Kali said they've been trying to set up a mass execution. Bulk purchasing guns, ammunition too.
I can believe that. Carly works in a gun shop, you see.
There's no mass execution, officer. Just ask questions and don't get sidetracked.
Okay, I need Kim to rein me
Please
in
don't
here.
set up a mass execution. You'll never be able to pull it off. The logistics alone are insane. Just ask questions. Be a normal cop.
I can't. I've tried. I cannot be a normal cop. Fuck. Okay, that... The only time I don't get Kim involved, I know.
Rigorous self-critique. Here it is. Hard facts from the man you are. You once jerked off in the locker room and were caught. You held a young woman by the arm and kept her in your apartment for 20 minutes against her will. That's right. These are not flights of fancy. These are real deeds, Harry, emerging from the darkness of your past. You tried shooting a fleeing suspect in the foot, but hit him in the pelvis, crippling him for life. And
Oh my God.
above all, you let life defeat you. All the gifts your parents gave you, all the love and patience of your friends, you drowned in a neurotoxin. You let misery win, and it will keep on winning till you die, or overcome it.
Holy shit. That is the most important block of text for this entire playthrough in my mind. And I will tell you why. Okay. What do we get from this, first of all? Intelligence and psychology checks. Red check failures heal +1 morale. Physical and motorics red check failures heal 1 health. The learning cap for pain threshold is raised. Okay. Interesting. So we actually get things back from failing, which is kind of unique. Yeah, there is a reason that Harry did his best to forget everything. That's exactly what I suspected. And I want to tell you about what this would mean to me in the context of like someone learning more about like a part of their life that they previously were not attached to. Right? So I'm going to bring it back to my discussion points about like this is what we talked about last time. We were not sure if we were a good cop. This is unknown to us, right? And it's not like super known to everyone around us. Obviously, it's going to be known to any of the people we interacted with in our past life. But this being here in the unknown is one of the only reasons that any other movement can take place for us, right? Like we've been very concerned about like, is it even possible to repair ourselves? Is it even possible to become a better person? Because at the end of the day, let's say I live my life in service of good deeds. Well, what happens if everything I did before this was still horrific, right? Am I going to be okay with myself? Our view of ourself has been changing in a somewhat positive direction, and we've been questioning whether or not we can call ourselves a complete failure. So one thing that just changed is we discovered that no, we weren't a good cop, right? We were not one. This is coming over here, right? We were not a good cop. And in fact, we may not have been a good person, right? And I think that those two things are intermixed because, like, being a cop, being someone who is responsible for other people, responsible for keeping the law, keeping the peace, like, our actions and our deeds in that role, they do sort of like, they are married in a way with our views of ourselves. Like if we abused our power, if we did things that we would call inappropriate, like you know, shooting at a fleeing suspect and holding someone against their will, right? Not only are we not a good cop, we don't feel like it's possible for us to be a good person. Unfortunately, the more we tried to obscure this, right? I think it's been like Inland Empire, Volition, some of Half-Life. There's been all these voices who have been like protecting us in a way from discovering this because they are interjecting at points to say like, well, if you discover more about yourself, you're going to realize that you weren't a good cop and you're not going to feel very much like a good person either. And that's going to wreck you. At the same time, I think it is healthier not to deny these things anymore and to like, I think it would be somewhat aimless to just try to be a good person generally. Because therapy and mental health, like, it's not just random what you do. Like, in some ways, you need clear objectives, right? We need to know when we're starting off, like, what are we trying to actually work on here? Because if we're just trying to work on, like, being good, this is, like, too abstract. It's too broad. It touches too many areas of life, right? We want to get things more concretely and say, like, well, I don't want people to be afraid of me. Okay, well, that's something that a good person would do, right? We're trying to come up with more concrete things. And so learning these specific points would be very beneficial to that. Like, here's the facts from the man that you are, right? You jerked off in the locker room and were caught. So to me, that says like, there's a kind of selfishness to that. There is a lack of self-respect. There is a lack of impulse control. There is lots of like lots of shame wrapped up in that, right? You held a young woman by the arm and kept her in your apartment for 20 minutes against your will. So similar things here, but also we have the capacity to be authoritative. We are seeing from ourselves that we are controlling, that we're imposing, that we lack empathy, right? These are not flights of fancy, these are real deeds. Harry emerging from the darkness from your past. You tried shooting a fleeing suspect in the foot, but hit him in the pelvis, crippling him for life. So, I think that's like lacking composure, right? We were probably drunk, let's be honest, right? These don't even have to be emotional things. These could just be like we have poor accuracy, right? We have poor accountability, right? We lack yeah, we lack accountability, and I think that we also like let's see, if you shot someone and crippled him, I mean, there's lots of regrets in that, it sounds like. All the gifts your parents gave you and the love and patience of your friends, you drowned in a neurotoxin. You let misery win. So it's similar things. It's selfishness, it's lack of self-respect, it's lack of impulse control, it's a lack of empathy, right? It's circulating around all of these subjects. And it will keep winning until you die or overcome it. So like these are more concrete things to work on with someone than just like I want to be a good person, right? Because I don't know what to do with that if you come to me and say that that's our objective. Like you just, I want to be a good person. I don't want to keep repeating the same mistakes. Then I'm going to ask, okay, well, what were some of those mistakes, right? And so having someone discover the list of things that we just did and knowing that there are going to be patterns in probably other areas of their life, we can now start to formulate an idea of, all right, well, let's attack these things, right? What are some ways that like we can start living in service of not being selfish, right? In learning to put other people first. What are some things that we can do to regain some self-respect? For example, not embarrassing ourselves every time that we get in a conversation with someone, caring more about our appearance, caring more about the language we use and whether or not we approach people using authority like we just tried to do, right? Lack of impulse control. That's like a behavioral intervention that we can start working on. We can start processing like elements of shame, which is kind of what we did over here, right? These give us clear, measurable objectives to actually work on. So in the process of like working with someone like Harry, this would be a huge moment of self-discovery. It will be upsetting to learn these things, as it naturally should be. Like part of him wants to forget all of this stuff and just be a blank slate that can, you know, be reshaped into something new. But a lot of the work in becoming more like self-aware has to do with, you know, recognizing your ego defenses, right? these are very common defense mechanisms that we use to protect ourselves from learning the complicated things that exist in our unconscious, right? I'll just draw Freud's like iceberg thing here, right? Freud said that a lot of our thoughts are unconscious, and that's been maintained by more than just Freud, but the iceberg analogy works for this, right? And Harry has not, like, just because he lost his memories does not mean that he has no, that some of his unconscious thoughts and behaviors are not going to surface constantly, right? I think there was some questions in some of the chat or comments, I forget where, they were asking like, well, why would he still have an addiction if he just woke up and didn't have his memories? Well, because like whether or not he has conscious awareness of them, like his thoughts and behaviors, they are still chemically and psychologically bound to his actions, right? Even if he says, oh yeah, I really don't want to smoke, like he might be going through nicotine withdrawal anyways, and that's going to dictate a lot of his behavior. He may tell himself, look, I don't want to be authoritative. I don't want to be selfish. I don't want to be any of these things. But simply because you have that thought does not mean that this suddenly follows suit, right? There's a certain amount of this that, like, the work that you have to do is how do you translate things this way? How do you make something that is unconscious conscious, right? And that's what we've been trying to do as we explore our past and explore our good and wrong deeds. But this line right here is very treacherous to cross for someone who is like Harry, who may be afraid of what he used to be, right? And so a lot of times as we are trying to bring things up this way, our ego defenses, they get in the way of that and they try to send them back down, right? Because the ego is basically like, it's called the reality principle, right? The id is like your pleasure principle. It's like dealing with all the primal desires and those sorts of things. And the superego is like where your sense of morality and bigger ideas live. And the ego sort of moderates these things and translates both of the extremes down to like reality, right? And so it gets protective when we face things like, hey, you used to not be a good person, right? Oh no, my super ego is now challenged by that, right? Like, hey, you just learned that you were a fucking asshole and that you did all kinds of like horrible things to people. This has the power to like shatter your self-image. And so the ego tries to moderate that by like, you know, either keeping things like kind of where they are or interpreting them. So let me give you an example of that. So common ego defense, right? So like, here's the thing, right? We don't like when things don't agree, right? We do not like to see our behaviors disagree with one another. So for example, let's say you looked around at my apartment, right? And you saw that like things were neatly set up, right? Like there's the environment's kind of clean. There's not like dishes in the sink. There's not a bunch of like, I don't know, cat toys lying around. Like it's neatly put together and it's organized and it's well taken care of, right? But then let's say you got in my car and you discovered that there's like Gatorade bottles on the floor and like an expired air freshener and old receipts that I haven't taken out, right? Like, and you would look at that and say like, well, like why could this happen? Because we see this all the time, right? I have seen this from people and sometimes I see it in, you know, my own behavior, not specifically this. My car is pretty clean right now. But like sometimes we see that where one part of someone's life looks super put together and another one doesn't. And you might start asking the question of why. Why would this happen? Like, why would you walk into my house and see that it's put together, and then you go into my car and it's a fucking mess? Like, let me ask what your read on that is. What do you think is going on there? Because it has to do with all of this. There's a million rats in the walls, yeah. Me at work versus day to day. Yeah. That could be. That could be. I've seen many people like that in real life. Maybe it's OCD. Yeah. This is good, right? We're looking for like what explains this? What explains two behaviors that don't actually agree with each other? One area of my life is super pristine and put together, and another one is like kind of a mess. Car is go-go time. Maybe I don't care about my car. Could have guests coming over. Maybe the car is not important to the person. No mental energy for cleaning. This is all good stuff. This is the area where I'm a detective, right? Where I'm like, what could be the explanation for this behavior? I'm curious. One is elevated at the expense of the other. One of my the car is more private versus showing your home is to guests. Yeah, a lot of times like people will say, well, I don't live in my car, right? There's all kinds of good reasons, and none of these are wrong, by the way. It could have been any of them, right? It could be just like a lack of energy or whatever. But very often people will say, well, look, I'm not trying to live in my car. It doesn't matter that it's not put together. I might not have guests over or something. But all of those are basically ego defenses, because what we're saying to ourselves is, look, we don't like when things don't agree, when two behaviors don't agree. So when things don't agree, we tend to force them to. We will come up with a way to make these two incompatible behaviors agree, even though they don't, right? And we will call that like a justification, right? We will say to ourselves, well, I'm not living in my car. It doesn't need to be clean. I'm not showing it off to people. It's not representative of my lifestyle as much. These are just ways to make two incompatible behaviors that don't actually agree. And I would rather come up with a way to make them agree and make this okay than do the digging for whatever is trying to come up to my conscious mind and that I'm sending back down by saying, no, there's like a rational reason for this. It's because I don't sleep in my car, right? Here's another one that's very common as well, right? Oh, I went to the gym earlier today, so today I'm gonna eat a bunch of sweets later. I deserve it, right? I'm gonna eat this cake because like I am gonna work out later, right? We start like, it does not make sense to go spend 5 hours at the gym and then blow it on eating sweets right after or later in the day, right? These are two behaviors that don't really agree. And rather than sort out the disagreement, we just come up with ways to force them to. And those are in defense of our ego, right? That's an ego defense right there. What I'm saying is there can be absolutely no reason for this behavior. Yeah, I mean, I think that part of this is down to like, these are simple examples, right? Where I'm talking about like the difference between cleaning an area of your life and not, or just changing your impulse to eat something sweet or not. But think about this in a more complicated sense, okay? Now that I've given you a simple example, what is this right here? What is a functional alcoholic? If not exactly this, right? Oh, well, I am able to go to work or go to school and I get my stuff done and I'm not destroying my life in this area. And so like, I'm functioning even though I'm drinking all the time at home, and I'm not putting a lot of, effort into stopping that, right? This is the same thing right here, okay? Except it's on a more complicated subject. These two behaviors do not agree with one another. To be diligent and measured and taking lots of care to keep your life structured in only one area, and then not putting any of that structure in your health, right? Or your finances, or whatever you have to do to keep the lifestyle of addiction up. And so, yeah, two things don't agree here, but we force them to. We come up with a way to not integrate whatever is trying to come up to the surface here, which is that, like, wow, I have a problem. Like, imagine someone discovering that idea that, oh, actually being an alcoholic is making parts of my life unmanageable or is ruining relationships, right? And to become aware of that would start to change the makeup of your self-esteem. It would start asking you to change behaviors. You would have to, like, suddenly give up this thing that you've become dependent on. Like, it's a lot of work and a lot of effort. And so what we do is our ego defense gets involved and keeps this from coming to the surface, and it will stay down here because we've come up with a way to make it agree. So this is a force that opposes your behavioral changes, right? And your cognitive changes. And I see a lot of that in what is going on with our own rigorous self-critique here, right? Every time, like, we learn something new, there is a chance for us to, like, suppress it, right? And Volition and Inland Empire, they have in some ways been kind of ego defenses to be like, no, you don't have to integrate these things, right? It's okay for these not to agree who you were and who you are. You can just be a new person. But I think that this is unhelpful for Harry's healing, right? I genuinely think that it's much healthier for all of this stuff to come up here. And even if it is psychologically damaging in the moment, to have the kinds of protective factors to integrate it in a healthy way, right? And we'll talk about protective factors in a moment. Like, we don't just want to suddenly make everything bad about our life conscious because it would break us down. That's what Volition is worried about. But we can't just go through our life with our house clean and our car dirty. I mean, we can, but bigger picture, we cannot go through Harry's life with, I used to be a shit cop and a shit person, and now I'm trying to be a good cop and a good person, and just totally separate them. If we want to actually heal from this, we're going to need to make a lot of that stuff conscious and not try to defend ourselves from the lack of agreement. We're going to have to find ways to face the idea that we are a walking contradiction, but there are things we can address to make them more consistent. And it's this stuff right here, right? So this applies to Harry's life, and it applies to the lives of a lot of people who I work with, who, again, is a lot of people in addiction who may not even remember everything that they've done, may have very similar experiences to Harry, where they have stolen from family members to support their addiction. They've, committed crimes to support their addiction. They've done all kinds of stuff that, as a sober person today, they are not happy with. And I am not working with them on how to somehow make those two lives compatible by saying, like, well, it was your addiction. It's not who you were. It's like, well, let's embrace the fact that we're not happy about those things and find a healthy way to integrate them by working on what they represent to you. If we need to work on selfishness, let's do it, right? If we need to work on our regrets, then we need to learn how to make amends to people rather than just try to move on from it, right? So that's my viewpoint on why we have been going about approaching Harry's past and his present. And, I think that, like, not looking in the mirror in some ways is, like, one of these, right? Like, here's two things that don't agree. I don't know a lot about who I am, so I'm gonna like deny myself looking in the mirror, right? To actually like face that side of ourselves would mean embracing some of these like uncomfortable unconscious things, right? I just don't think that we were ready yet until recently, until we have started to actually do some good deeds, right? Because what we did recently was we gained some self-respect in our interactions with Annette. We have changed some of our impulse control by not chasing around every, you know, bit of alcohol and cigarette, right? We struggled at first, but we're doing it now. We don't have to be as shameful about who we used to be because we are apologizing for a lot of it, right? This is stuff that we are still struggling with, is like how not to be authoritative. My read on Harry is that like when he gets in a bind, he's still struggling not to like do the kinds of things he used to do, which was, you know, holding someone in a room, which we just learned that he did. Like, it's very in line with me trying to just arrest everybody. So this is still an area of work, but we are changing our selfishness. We're changing our composure. Our accuracy is definitely much better after shooting the guy down. And we're trying to be accountable by apologizing by a lot of things, right? And in addressing who we look like is sort of addressing the shame around that. So our Harry is going through a journey of change and acceptance and development. And it's messy, and it's not holistic either. Not all of these things are going to come together all at once. For example, this one is still very much in a work in progress. But I fucking love this. I love this rigorous self-critique thing, this game mechanic, because it's like, it's so representative of this issue that is like very common in psychological work, right? This journey doesn't sound very disco. I mean, it's the journey that we're on, right? Are ego defenses ever valid in their reasoning? Yes. So I'll tell you about some more ego defenses, which are not the worst thing ever, right? Like, displacement is one of them. It's terrible. We talked about displacement, which is like when we're dealing with something we don't have the right target for an emotion, so we displace it to someone else, right? Again, to become aware of that, to make an unconscious feeling conscious, could be damaging to ourselves, which is that like, look, I'm struggling with anger at myself over who I used to be, so I lash out at everyone around me. Like, that would be really insightful, but it would also bring up a lot of shame. And so to displace it would mean like we just attribute it to someone else and say, yeah, no, I'm pissed off because you know, I can't find my badge and that's not my fault, it's someone else's fault. Like, it's an ego defense, right? Two other common ones are what I might call sour grapes and sweet lemon. So a sour grape, right? This comes from an Aesop fable where there's a fox who's going through the forest, and he finds some grapes, some delicious sustenance in the jungle or whatever forest, and he wants them, but there's like a thorn bush between him and the grapes. And so what he tells himself, right, because he can't get them, is that they must be sour. Like, oh, I didn't want those grapes anyways, they're probably sour, I probably wouldn't want them. Like, this is an ego defense, right? This is what happens when someone gets rejected and then they're like, yeah, well, whatever, you're ugly anyways, right? You've just made this into a sour grape. Like, you wanted something, and instead of embracing the idea that like you can't have something that you want all the time, and that's like you would embrace the idea that, you know, maybe I'm not attractive to this person. Our ego defense gets in the way, and it keeps it at an unconscious level to say that, yeah, well, you didn't even really want that thing. So that's a sour grape. And the opposite of that is a sweet lemon, which is, this is making, this is forcing a good situation to be bad. This is forcing a bad situation to be good, right? It's like biting into a lemon and telling yourself that it's actually quite sweet and that it's not sour at all, right? A good example of this would be like, let's say I'm, you know, in a fucking office all day and it's super hot and I'm sweating and it's like making me dehydrated. And so I tell myself, you know, this is really uncomfortable right now, but at least it's getting me to drink more water. I have been trying to drink more, right? Like what you have done is you have forced two things that don't really agree to somehow have a better outcome. Like sweating is this is actually good for me because it's making me hydrate more. Right? It comes through when people are like, well, you know, this job doesn't pay me enough, but that's actually good for me because I'll have less money, which will teach me to budget better. Right? That's not like, someone asked if the ego defenses are always negative, and this is when I'd say, no, it's not that negative. Like, look, if that's your reality, right? If you're Fritta Girl, and stop me from talking about her if I'm going back down that direction. But imagine you're Fritta Girl, okay? Her whole fucking life has to be a sweet lemon just to survive, all right? She has to go into her fucking claustrophobic little booth and tell herself that, like, oh, this bad situation, this fucking lemon of a life is actually quite sweet to me, right? Because not getting paid teaches me to budget better. Having to spend all day here keeps me from spending time at home where I don't feel like anyone listens to me, right? Every time I go to work, I'm reminded of how bad my life is, and it makes me work harder to get out of this. Have you ever felt like that? That the job you have and everything around it and the people that you have to work with that you may not like, and you look at them and you're like, I'm glad I'm facing this because it is reminding me of what's important to me and that I need to get out of this, right? Then that's what you're doing right here. And this one's not so bad, right? I think that these are not all equal. That's not forcing something to be unconscious in like a suppressive way. What it's doing is protecting ourselves from the ego, which would chime in to say, your life sucks and they're getting nothing out of this. Like, I think we just have to believe that even the bad things we're going through are worth something. And in that sense, this is not a problem, right? This is a coping skill in some ways, as long as it's not leading to like deep denial, right? So it's a thin line between helpful positivity and sweet lemons, or sweet lemon of toxic positivity. No, I think, yeah, toxic positivity would be like always saying, well, look at the bright side, right? I think that a sweet lemon's not as bad because there's still an acknowledgement that this situation sucks. You're not trying to like twist reality, because like toxic positivity to me would be like going into Fritta Girl's job and being like, no, I actually do like this. You know, it's actually interesting to see the people, and like, no, then you're like, you're trying to make something positive when it's not. At least here, you're telling yourself, yeah, this does suck. It really is shit, but I got to get something out of this, even if it's just motivation to change it. Right. So that's one of the ego defenses that's like not super bad for you. But yeah, a couple of other ones are like projection, right? Projection's one we hear a lot of. The idea is that you are, you think you're looking at a window, but you're actually looking at a mirror, right? You're looking at someone else and saying, yeah, this guy's a pain in the ass. He thinks he's so smart. What's his deal? What a jerk, right? And I think I'm like looking at someone through a window. Like I'm not seeing that that's actually me. And I'm actually looking at a mirror and I'm like, wow, I hate the idea that, you know, this person intellectualizes things to hide from their insecurities or whatever. Again, it's keeping something from surfacing here, right? It's a defense against the ego, and the ego just meaning the thing that dictates what reality is to you, right? Another common one is called reaction formation. Reaction formation is when you express the opposite of what you feel. So kids experience this a lot when they are picking on the girl who sits next to them, but they actually like them, right? When you're mean to someone that you actually like, that's reaction formation. And we have probably seen a lot of this in Kim's behavior, where he says things like, I'm not interested in this, but he actually kind of is, right? Why might he be doing that? Well, unconsciously, there is a desire to be a little more free and loose and whatever else. But part of his like whole thing is staying composed and professional. And so he doesn't always allow this like childlike spirit to come out, right? And so he keeps it here by using this. I'm not interested in this. He said interested, yeah. He's separating work and personal stuff. Yeah, I mean, like, again, these are not all bad. Do not get that idea. Ego defenses are not bad. They are just worthy of being investigated. That, like, look, if you're struggling to face the thing in reality, there might be a reason for that, right? And if we find that it's not worth bringing into reality, that's fine. But we do have to notice that we do force things to agree when they don't. That's what this is about. Yeah, a tsundere is a little bit like that, right? Pretending not to like someone when you actually do. A cigarette a day, exactly. This is kind of an ego defense as well. It's a kind of a justification, right? It's like it doesn't really agree with like it not being a full habit, but still doing it like it's a habit, just not at that intensity or something like that. Can you explain the core difference between intellectualization and rationalization? I would say intellectualization is like talking about an emotional subject in an abstract way, giving a history of an emotion rather than expressing it, right? Where I'm like, yeah, I got in an argument with my friend yesterday and it made me so mad. Like, I'm just like giving you a history. I'm like reading the Wikipedia version of what happened. That would be kind of like intellectualizing, which again is not bad. It's just if that's not our objective, if our objective is to be emotionally insightful, then we want to avoid that. And rationalization, it's kind of like similar to this. It's coming up with a logical reason to do something like, well, I don't live in my car, so there's no reason for me to clean it. But yeah, anyways, I bring all this up because I think it's very relevant to what we just learned about the ideas of rigorous self-critique, right? Which this is not just self-critique, it's rigorous. It's rigorous, it's painful, it's challenging. It's challenging to this right here, the ego, which is defining our understanding of reality, that's trying to integrate ideas of morality and ideas of like the primordial voice, right? So, yeah, pretty interesting. That we just learned more like an hour ago. Yeah, I know. I know. Okay, let's return to what we were doing. Thank you for watching my video. If you enjoyed it, consider giving it a like and letting me know what you thought of it in the comments. You can subscribe to catch the next video here, or you can see things a little bit earlier if you support the channel either through Twitch or Patreon. Links to both of those and the community Discord are in the description. Thanks again, and I will see you next time. Bye.